Welcome to the Diva Details. Welcome to the Diva Details, where bold, confident women embrace life unapologetically. From love and sex to wellness and reinvention, we keep it raw, real, and powerful. No filters, no limits. Just fearless conversations to help you thrive. Let's dive in with Diva Mia.
Well, hello. This is Diva Mia. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about differences between sex and body education. Depending on what generation you come from, I think a lot has changed over time, and we have grown a lot over the generations, but some things have kind of gone backwards. Why don't we just kind of dive right in today and talk about sex and body image and how we feel about ourselves. Back when there were baby boomers, so the baby boomers, just so you know, it's 1946 birth rate to 1964. The message back then was don't talk about sex. If you were born in the baby boomer age, sex was a duty. And you always you got married first, or you got married or you had sex first, but it was a duty. The duty was to reproduce. It was all about reproduction. If you think about it, it's after both World War IIs and we had lost a lot of people. It was a duty to get married and to have sex. You don't discuss it, you just do. Female pleasure was rarely discussed. I know I've talked a lot about female pleasure on this podcast, but it wasn't discussed very much. And we, as women, have evolved in a way that we can now talk about it with our friends. We can talk about it on our podcast. We can talk about it in public. They even talk about it on the news sometimes. Female pleasure is something to be enjoyed and discussed, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Then body image was shaped by magazines and men's approvals. If a man didn't like the way you looked, you could feel bad about yourself. Like Marilyn Monroe was very curvy, and she was one of the biggest sex symbols ever. But it was a thinner look, but Marilyn Monroe was a size 14. It's amazing how things have evolved over time, but body image was completely determined by men. Now, I think women have more of a say in body image, but there's still a big male component there. But boomer women were taught to be chosen and not to choose. They were taught that they had to look a certain way, act a certain way in order to be chosen. It was a very superficial thing to do at the time because all they wanted was to get married. That was their duty. And then Generation X came along, and that's my generation, 1965 to 1980. And my generation was told to be sexy, but not too much. This was also the rise of porn because of technology and MTV, and there were supermodels everywhere. We would look at Teen and Vogue and all the different magazines, and sex became visual before emotional. Sex it opened the door for more of a promiscuous type of sexual experience for a lot of people. It was a conflicting message because we were very independent people, but we were trying to be independent as well as being desirable. We learned how to have sex a lot of times from the movies, but not from mentors because people still weren't really talking about it much. They discussed it, but not like they do now. We were kind of a wild group of people, Generation X, and we ran a lot of businesses, but sex wasn't really discussed. Then the Millennials came around, and they were born between 1981 and 1996. They were the generation of social media. And sex for them was everything is sexual all the time, nonstop sex, 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 sex. Throw up as much sex as you can on social media and you compare yourself to everyone. And sex became very positive, but there was no emotional context behind it. They had a pressure to perform and document and monetize their beauty and to record it and to publish it and to make money off of it. The Millennials, they didn't get sex education, they got performance pressure. So we had a little bit more sex education, but the Millennials, they didn't. They just kind of got thrown out there from a younger age, too. So they evolved, and then came 1997 to 2012, and that's Generation Z. Generation Z is a lot of the teenagers these days, and their message is to identify first and have intimacy later. They're more open, but they also have a lot of anxiety. I know my son said he was nervous about kissing a girl because he didn't want to get accused of sexual assault. It's a generation of crazy wokeness, the Gen Z, where the wokeness came about during the millennial timeframe, but they have really put pressure on Gen Zers. I feel sorry for them. They're not into sex. They have less sex, but they label everything. Everything has a category or a label. Their labels have really trickled over to society as a whole. But they are anxious about sex. A lot of them haven't even kissed people by the time they're teenagers. It's open about it, but they will not move forward. That's why you'll see teenagers sitting on the couch next to each other, texting each other. There's more information, but the confidence is not there for the generation Z. It's sad because they know everything about sex. They make comments, they make jokes about it, but they don't know how it feels because they're told to be very cautious about anything related to sex. They've been over-sexualized visually, but they've been understimulated physically. That's the Generation Z. It's interesting how it's starting to evolve because some of these people are 20 years old now and are about to be 20 years old, and they are having issues related to sex. It makes you kind of wonder what will happen with the procreation of the species. But what we were never taught is that across generations, these truths were missed. And they were missing across all generations because no one ever taught us that desire changes across a lifetime. It changes as you age. What happens when you're a teenager is not the same as what happens when you're an older adult. The pleasure that you learn over time, it's not automatic. When you're in a relationship or when you have sex, it's going to be the same your entire life. And it's not. That pleasure is learned over time. As you get more and more experience, you learn more about your body. As your body ages, you can also become more sensual and more sexual. You can have better orgasms. The orgasms I will say that I have in my 50s are way better than I had in my 20s. So the orgasms can be more explosive. And the sex can be amazing because your self-worth can be higher. But sex and self-worth are not the same thing. How you feel about yourself can be a sexual thing as well. I mean, we were taught anatomy, but never intimacy, never sexuality as the way that it happens through social media and other types of means of information. But no generation was taught how to love our changing bodies, and our bodies change. Not everything is as perfect as it was in your 20s, and as you evolve, we were taught to critique ourselves, especially women. I know I'm right there with you, that how you look matters more than anything else. The truth is, ladies, how you feel about yourself matters the most. The most successful diet culture trick was convincing women that their bodies were the problem. Your body's not the problem. Your confidence, maybe, your sensuality, your desires, your needs, feeling comfortable with who you are because this is your body and you should truly love it, no matter how it looks. Social media has changed everything. I think that you should love your body no matter how it looks, but you should always still strive for health. Health is always the most important. Without health, you don't have anything, as they say. You have a million problems until you get sick and then you only have one. So health is a huge thing to focus on when you're thinking about your body image. Social media, though, has changed everything. We are constantly comparing ourselves to, AI models now. Before we were comparing ourselves to 20-year-olds. Now we're comparing ourselves to perfected AI models that aren't even proportionally accurate. And so now beauty's become an algorithm driven, not just by influencers, but by artificial intelligence. It's only going to get more and more because sexual confidence has now become performative. If you don't have the sexual confidence, people are making AI models that do. These AI models are exciting to people because they're nervous to interact with real people. So the AI models are taken up because there's so many people that don't even want to talk to real people. They would prefer to talk to a fantasy. They would prefer to talk to someone that's not real. There's a hidden damage here because what's happening is people are creating dopamine burnout in their own bodies. It's a disconnection from physical sensation because they're not having touch. It's all visual. When that happens, there's confusion about intimacy. There's confusion about your intimacy with people and with your relationships, and it's ruining relationships. There's a lot of stuff on social media that ruins relationships. I know OnlyFans, there's a lot of men addicted to that, and it ruins relationships. They give money to women they don't know. And in the meantime, they're completely validating the partner that they're with. A filtered body, though, can never replace a feeling, an experience, a joy that you have from intimacy. Whether it's physical intimacy or just emotional intimacy, sexual intimacy is amazing. If you are only relying on social media to feel your dopamine hits, you're missing out. Social media isn't the enemy, but it's not being used correctly. It has not helped people that have normal aging bodies. Now, I'm a big one on saying your body doesn't need to age in the same way that it has in the past, because people a lot of times, they didn't know how to lift weights and they didn't know how to eat healthy. And now the information is at your fingertips, so you can be and become whoever you want to be or become. So your body doesn't have to become decrepit. You can find solutions to whatever ails you. It just takes discipline and perseverance. And you need to create an honest conversation, not just with your partners, but also with yourself, and figure out exactly what you want and exactly what would make you feel more confident and more sexual and more intimate with your partner. Find out what makes you feel comfortable and what doesn't. I mean, you can talk to ChatGPT and find out all kinds of things about your body. If you don't know, you can find out how often people have orgasms. You can find out how it's like to be multi-orgasmic, what it's like to be with a person that likes sex as much as you. There's information out there that you can find that you may not have realized regarding sexual health. But it starts with rebuilding your self-image. And your self-image is so important, especially the younger generations. I think as we get older, our self-image actually improves. We don't really care so much about what other people think. We care more about what we think and how we feel. That is a huge place to be. But younger generations, they're like we were in our teenage years, honestly. If we're honest with each other, we were also overanalyzing our bodies. The problem is now it's so much more in your face. We had magazines and other people to compare against, and now it's like in your face nonstop. I think people need to start speaking to yourselves in the mirror and telling yourselves that you love yourself and enjoy who you are, every part, because our bodies are temporary. Even whatever condition you're in now is a temporary condition. Because if you're moving in the right direction to change it, then it'll be different a month from now. It'll be different 3 months from now. It'll be different a year from now. Get yourself where you're comfortable. Don't worry about your partner. Get yourself where you're comfortable, where you want to be. If you want to be a bodybuilder, go be a bodybuilder. If you just want to be skinny and fit, go be skinny and fit. Don't let other people tell you how to be or how you want to be. Although I do think health is important, you be how you want to be. In order to do so, you need to consume content that reflects your future. So the algorithms out there, they will show you different contents. If you like a lot of bodybuilder competitions, you'll get more bodybuilder images. If you look at a lot of plastic surgery, you'll get more plastic surgery images. It filters what you look for. So be careful what you're looking for. Otherwise, sometimes it can make you feel not so comfortable with yourself. But reconnect to yourself as you're figuring out exactly what you want, and then figure out why. Why do you want to be a certain way? Why do you want to look a certain way? This is for your self-image. I think we also need to reconnect with our senses and the sensation of touch, the sensation of breathing, and even sleep and rest. I will tell you, sleep for me is like, when I can get great sleep, that's almost better than sex. I think it's amazing to get great sleep. Remember to rest and take care of yourself. And don't desire youth. I will tell you that there are so many women out there that are taking care of themselves now and into the future that look better than a lot of 20-year-olds out there. They have just turned their bodies into powerhouses with proper diet, juicing, bodybuilding, proper supplementation. It's amazing to see their confidence, because confidence is learned. It's not aged out. You should be more confident as you grow than you were when you were younger. And you should model self-respect for younger generations. If you're confident, it's okay. It's admirable. And other generations will look up to you. What you tolerate teaches more than what you say. If you tolerate disrespect from other people, if you tolerate abuse and lack of love, other generations will pick up on it. And confidence isn't pretending that you love your body. It's trusting your body again. It's loving things about you. It's loving things about your partner and enjoying who you are. We can talk about pleasure and confidence and body changes and responsibility, but realize that we need to have our own boundaries before we talk about any of that. We need to know what body changes we want, what pleasure we want, and we're responsible for all of it. We're going to try to normalize body changes over time, though. Realize that your body's going to change. Your joints may hurt. You might have some issues with some saggy skin here and there or some wrinkles. That's okay. There are things you can do to help with that. It's your choice whether you want to change things, though. You need to have your own boundaries set for exactly what you want in your life. Not just physically, but intimately with your body image, who you are as a person, how much disrespect you will allow, if any, in your life, how much you expect people to raise themselves up to your standard. If not, they're not in your life and not in your world. That's part of self-love, and that's part of self-respect. When you have self-love and self-respect about your body and about who you are as a person, the intimacy will become even better. As intimacy grows, your sexuality evolves, and it doesn't expire. I will tell you, ladies, as you get older, having multiple orgasms becomes easier and easier the more comfortable you are. The greatest sex education gift is teaching someone that you are allowed to feel safe in your body. You are allowed to feel comfortable in your body. Every generation, every person carries wounds, but we also carry wisdom in our body. Every wrinkle is a piece of wisdom. The goal isn't to be sexier than the next generation. It's to be more honest than the last and to be comfortable in our bodies. You can share this episode with your daughter because it's important to know that our bodies are beautiful, every single one of them. So what happens when we have relationships that aren't balancing us out? We may love different than they do, or we may have more confidence than they do. It causes a clash. Every generation didn't just learn sex differently. We learned relationships differently as well. So what our relationships are, it's based off of how we've learned differently. What one generation calls loyalty, another calls settling. So one generation will say, oh, you settled. When you're loyal to a person for 30 years, you settled. You weren't happy, so maybe you did. But, other generations say that was just being loyal. What one generation calls independence, another calls avoidance. So one generation say, I'm just an independent woman, where another generation can say, oh, you're just avoiding intimacy or you're avoiding getting married. So most relationships, conflict isn't personal, it's generational programming. So a lot of the things that we do in society is because of how we were raised and how the social environment. I know when I was growing up, the big thing was you needed to be married by the time you were 30 or you were going to be called a spinster. So everyone pushed people to get married and get into relationships by the time they were 30 because nobody wanted to be a spinster. It's kind of funny because now you see a bunch of movies of women in their 50s, which is my generation, which were the ones that rushed to get married. A lot of us are divorced or widowed or in unhappy marriages in their 50s, and because they got rushed and pushed into getting married. Now, there's so many different movies out where 50-year-olds are dating 20 and 30-year-olds. It's kind of interesting how the table has flipped, and it's women dating younger, not men. It's women dating younger. And women are really, Generation X, I will say, we are really coming into our sexual prime in our 50s. And it's interesting how even Hollywood has taken notice and rolled out movie after movie about older women dating younger men. Because remember, baby boomers, 1946, 64, they got married for security. They wanted commitment over compatibility. They just wanted the commitment. And in a relationship for them was more important than happiness. So the divorce rate was much lower as well. So they didn't really care. And their sex was private, rarely discussed. And I don't even know if their emotional needs were met. I think it was tolerated. Bad sex was tolerated in the boomers. They were taught to endure relationships, not examine them or not think about them or talk about them. Then Generation X came along and the women were independent in our relationships. Independence was essential because the women were working as much as the men. We didn't want to rely on a man too much or anyone else. So our love was more of a partnership. We wanted to find the right partner and not be rescued. We were kind of pushing back against the baby boomers. It was kind of a direct affront to the baby boomers, but we did not want to stay in relationships that were bad, although some of us did settle too because there was still a carryover with pushing women in their 30s into getting married. So sex and intimacy, we had sexual freedom. There was the era when women were burning their bras. I don't know if you remember that. But we had emotional caution. It was a little bit more cautious. We weren't just marrying the first man we saw. We wanted to find love. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. But by the time we were 30, we were told we needed to get married too. But we love deeply. I will say that one of the things that we did as Generation X is we kept one foot out the door. We were willing to leave if we had to. Whereas if it was a baby boomer, they would stay until the day they died. It's kind of cute because you still see the baby boomers around. They're the old couple still holding hands. They're at the pizza joint or sitting in the swing or the rocking chairs rocking together. I don't know if they were super happy, but they seemed like it. So that was what everybody was aspiring to have. And in Generation X, we started getting divorced a lot. Millennials came around, and then their expectation was completely different than ours. So millennials, again, is 1981 to 1996. Their emotional availability is non-negotiable. It's all about their emotions. I mean, it's like a therapy session when you talk to a millennial. Love has to feel fulfilling and expressive. Millennials just really want to make sure that they feel deeply when they love someone. They have high expectations for communications. They're not going to settle. There's a lot of millennials never settled, and they'd rather be alone than in an unhappy marriage or an unhappy relationship. There's a lot more single millennials than there were Generation X. Sex and intimacy is positive. It's emotionally complex, and everybody talks about the feelings all the time. Even the men talk about their feelings. But desire has to be mixed, and it's about comparison. It's about happiness. It's about joy. But it's kind of exhausting because it causes a lot of anxiety because you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. Millennials, they want that soul deep love. They want that soul connection. They want their soulmate found, but they're terrified of choosing wrong. They always have this fear of missing out. The FOMO, where you find someone, they're really good, they're almost perfect, they're 90% there or 80% there, but they have a fear of missing out that they're choosing the wrong person. So millennials are constantly looking for someone else. Or they get into a relationship and they don't attend to it because they've got one foot out the door. They're looking around to see if there's something better. They can self-sabotage their own relationships. So when they self-sabotage their own relationships, they wonder why they're still unhappy because they were with somebody that could have been a great partner that they could have grown together with, but they self-sabotage because they have that fear of missing out. And then Generation Z is emotional safety first. If a guy makes a woman feel uncomfortable, she backs away and they don't talk anymore. I mean, this is the generation of ghosting. In fact, they've perfected the generation of ghosting. They identify with alignment before commitments. They say, are we aligned? This has trickled through all the generations. All these emotional, therapeutic, if you will, comments and ways to explain things have trickled all the way through. They're slower to commit than Generation X, but they're faster to exit too. They don't want to play around. If someone upsets them, they just leave. They're not willing a lot of times to work things out. They'll just leave. They're more into less sex, but more conversation. They like to talk it all out. They will talk. Now, for me, I'm not a big talker. I want to express my feelings, have a conversation, but then I try to let it go. Whereas they will talk it out until you've talked it to death. But less sex for Gen Z is big and more conversation. And then they label everything. This was this label, or this felt this way, or this had an emotional connection. But they crave connection, but they fear the emotional risk. They don't want to type their emotions because they've been so taught anxiety and fear of everything. Don't go outside because you might get hurt. Don't go play in the street because you might get hurt. Stay in the house. Whereas Generation X, we were the opposite. We were left outside to fend for ourselves. So Generation X was like, go for it. And now Generation Z is so scared because they haven't ever actually gone for it. They haven't tried new experiences. And when they run across new experiences, they're terrified of them. So when relationships are like this, you have to understand that you have to meet your expectations with reality. And if you are dating a younger person, whether you're a man or a woman, you need to understand what generation they come from because it can impact your relationship. Boomers want a provider. They want stability. They want respect through sacrifice. They'll sacrifice for the man, but they want respect. They're okay with emotional distance as long as they are provided for and they have stability. Whereas Generation X, we want equality. We want partnerships. We want freedom. We want independence. We want passion, desire, autonomy. But sometimes it's inconsistent from our partners because it's a lot to expect. The equality, the freedom, the juggling, it's kind of anti-masculine and feminine, honestly. And millennials, they want emotional fluency and they want to be fluent emotionally. They want to grow together. They want to have passion and validity. Millennials, they get burned out a lot because they are just constantly trying to keep up. Remember, if you're dating a millennial and you're in your 50s, it can be challenging. Then Generation Z, they're more about safety and alignment. They're okay not having sex with somebody for a long time as long as they align and they connect. It's all about mutual healing, all their traumas that I don't know where they're getting all these traumas from, but they've got mutual healing and they always have safe spaces and they analyze things to the point of analysis paralysis because it's always about analysis. It's always about overthinking things, which for them causes a lot of anxiety. So if you're dating one of these people, you have to realize that every generation has corrected the pain of the last and created new pains, new anxiety, new issues around sex and intimacy and relationships. Older generations see younger ones as too sensitive, and younger generations see older ones as emotionally unavailable. They think we're into sex, but we don't connect emotionally. One values longevity and another values fulfillment. And I think I'm kind of caught in between the baby boomers and the Generation Z, where I want a long relationship, but I also want to be fulfilled. And staying together used to be the goal, but now it feels being seen as having a connection, having alignment, being happy is the goal, whoever you're with. I will say that through the generations, boomers divorced way later in life after they endured, after they suffered. The women suffered a lot in the boomer generation. Generation X divorced once we got disillusioned. Maybe our partners cheated on us, or it just became completely miserable. And millennials, they just delay marriage or opt out altogether. They don't get married at all. And then Generation Z, they're still questioning the institution completely. So I don't even know where that's going to go. But millennials, they're delaying it if they get married at all. And divorce didn't rise because love failed. Expectations have completely changed. Social media has reshaped things as well. It's reshaped our relationships. We have constant comparison, unrealistic emotional standards, and instant access to little tolerance of other people. It hasn't really ruined relationships. It's just raised expectations. Some teaching skills too. You can learn a lot about relationships on social media. But the swipe culture in dating apps has created endless choice. You may be with someone and then you're constantly fearing of missing out to look for someone else, and you lose out on a good one. So because there's less patience for repairing relationships and always going on to the next. There's more people exiting and fewer conversations to discuss things. We've never had more access to people, but the capacity for intimacy has also been decreased. So you need to look at your generational wiring and communicate your needs to your partner, and stop expecting everyone to know what you're expecting, because everybody's gone through decades of conditioning on how to behave. Choose curiosity in your relationships over criticism, and then redefine commitment as presence, not permanence. Redefine your commitment. Think about it. Are you present in your relationship? Because healthy love isn't about finding the right person in a generation. It's about unlearning the wrong rules for that generation. Realize your partner, it may not be perfect, because we come from imperfect models of love. We've inherited unfinished lessons throughout the generations, from generation to generation. So the opportunity is not to judge other generations, but to understand them, integrate the differences, integrate their wisdom, because every generation's got some really good ideas, because love has evolved, and so we must too. Learn what you can, grow into the best version of yourself. When you grow into the best version of yourself, physically, emotionally, sexually, you will find the best version of the person you're looking for. That best version of the person you're looking for may be phenomenal, because you've grown into the best version of you. That's what we're all looking for, is to get to the best version of us, to find the best partner that we can have for the rest of our lives. This is Diva Mia. I hope that you can find love. I hope that you can find happiness and joy in your relationships, in your sex, and in your self-confidence. I hope that dating after you're 50, 40, 50, 60 gets better as you get older. This is Diva Mia. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing from you. Visit thedivadetails.com to connect. See you next week for more.
Diva Details podcast and website are intended solely for informational and entertainment purposes. The content provided does not constitute professional, medical, financial, or legal advice. We are not licensed medical practitioners, financial advisors, or legal professionals. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Any financial topics discussed are based on personal opinions and experience and should not be considered professional advice. The content provided does not constitute legal advice. Diva Details and its affiliate, contributor, and guests are not liable for any losses or damages arising from the use of our content. The opinions expressed in the podcast are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organization, sponsors, or partner. All facts discussed in the podcast are researched and accurate to the best of our knowledge at the time of recording. Information may change over time. No guarantees are made regarding the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any statements or opinions presented. It is the responsibility of the listener to verify any and all facts that may influence their decision. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice.